All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over CSS fundamentals with you, CSS and CSS3. The last video was our intro, where we talked about inline CSS, which applied only to elements on a page, internal CSS, which applied to a whole page, external CSS, which applies site-wide. And we also started to look at classes and IDs. Here, and this may be a short lecture because I just want to break this down into divs and colors. All right? Div is sort of the anti-span, or span is sort of the anti-div. Because when we looked at this last time, when we looked at the example here, you remember that when we went down and we looked at our examples for inline, we used a span tag. So a span tag is what's referred to as an inline element. So I'm going to put in here HTML inline element. All right. An inline element, and here's a list of them, but an inline element is an element that does not have a blank line before it or a blank line after it. So here, what is an inline element? Most are permitted within the body tags are block, level, or inline. Inline typically may not only contain other inlines. All right, this is the big thing. When rendered visually, inline elements do not begin on a new line. So that's an inline. On the other hand, and there's probably, I'm sure there's some really good articles, inline versus block elements. All right, W3 schools, block and inline, that'd be a great place to start. So block level elements always start on a new line. Inline elements do not start on a new line. All right, so the div, which is short for division, is an example of a block level element. So these are some of the block level elements we've looked at thus far. These are some examples of the inline elements we've looked at so far. So a div, as it says, it's often used as a container for other elements. It has no required attributes. You can use style with it, you can use class with it, you can use ID with it. You can do all sorts of stuff with it. So let's grab the example that they have here. All right, and I'm going to literally put that one inside of here. So I'm hoping at least that let's save it and run it and see if I get a blank page. Good, that's what I'm looking for. All right, so let's go back down to the bottom and we will add, this is the same stuff that was just shown in the book. All right, div style equals. So the background color should be black, the text color should be white, and it should have 20 pixels of padding. This can be put over multiple lines if we want to do this. All right, so there's the beginning div, and that's all the stuff we have in it. Then we should have an H2 tag that says London, which should again be a black background with white text, 20 pixels of padding. Then we've got a paragraph that says London is the capital city of England. It is the most populous city in the United Kingdom with an area of over 13 million inhabitants. So that whole thing that you see right here, all of this, since this is all encompassed inside of the div, and since we said the div has a black background color, white text, and 20 pixels of padding, if we run this, there you go. Black background, white text, 20 pixels of padding. All right. So let's look at other ways we can use a div just so you see them. All right, so I'm going to take this whole thing that we just did, copy it to the clipboard, and comment it out. Paste it back in again, but this time, instead of putting all this stuff here, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to say ID equals, we'll call it London text. How about London look? All right, so we're setting an ID up now for London look. And let's think about this. If I run this, it's not going to look any special way because we haven't associated that London look with anything yet. So it's an ID, call London look. So I'm going to go back up into my style tag. Here it is. And I'm going to say # London look. And within the curly braces, paste back in what I had before. So we don't say style equal, background color is black, color is white, padding is 20 pixels. All right, so we've now got a London look. It's an ID of London look. Here we're saying a div with an ID of London look. So now, boom, it's black again, black background, white text. Exactly what we just saw a minute ago. Let's keep carrying on with this idea here. All right, I'm going to change this from ID to class. All right, come back up here in my document and change that from a # to a dot, which means class. So now I've got London look. Boom. I can come in here now with another paragraph and say class equals London look. Am I white text, black background too? And let's look and see if indeed we are. And you see indeed we are. So now what I've shown you is how we can use the style tag, which is kind of like using it as a span in a div. I showed you how to use an ID with the div. I showed you how to use a class with the div. All right? The first one was inline. The next few were internal. Can we make it external? Why can't we? So let's come in here and let's grab this stuff that we have that says London look. All right, I just took it out of there and let's put it in our style.css file. We don't need this Packers. We'll leave it in there, but we'll put it there. Now again, London look is a class with a background color of black and a text color of white and 20 pixels of padding. Let's change it around just so we're sure that indeed it's going to work. So in here we'll say the background color, let's make it purple. Purple. And let's make the color gold. And let's make the padding 50 pixels. All right. So now, there's our class as London look, and so is that. Now this won't say on my white text anymore. I don't remember what we just said it was. And my gold text, purple background too. So I've saved both. Let's run this. And notice now, 50 pixels of padding, purple text, purple background, yellow or gold text. All right. So what I've just shown you, I just want to keep beating this into your heads, is we're working with divs. A div is a division. It's a bunch of stuff you put together so that you're able to, if you want to, manipulate all of it using the same CSS. And I showed you using the style with this for inline. I showed you internal with both an ID and a class, and I showed you external with both an ID and a class. So you've already seen several examples. All right? I would strongly suggest that you come in here and look at this div, okay? Again, defines a division, block level. The div is often used together with CSS to lay out a page. By default, browsers always place a line break before and after divs because they're block level elements. But you can change that with CSS if you want to. Notice the align statement. You shouldn't be using it like that anymore. The div supports global attributes in HTML. So it supports all the stuff that you see here. And I'll let you look at that yourselves. It also supports event attributes. Anytime you hear event, think programming. All right, think JavaScript. All right. Let's go on though in here. Let's see what else is in here. That's it for the div tag. But I do want to show you one more thing that's kind of neat with a div. All right, I'm going to grab this right here. And I'm going to create another div tag. And I'm not going to worry about London look or anything else. So I will, for right now, take all this stuff that I've just been doing and comment it out. Now I'm going to put another div in here. Okay? And I'm going to give it, just so it has something unique, I'm going to say ID equals, we're going to call it box. Okay? And I'm not going to put anything in it. But I've got a div with an ID of box. So I'm going to come back up here into my style tag. All that stuff has been commented out. So I'm going to come in here and say, okay, I've got an ID of box. And I'm going to say I want it to have a width of 400 pixels. I want it to have a height of 300 pixels, and I want it to have a background color of red. So why would I be doing this? Let's take a look. All right, now you see what I have here. Divs are kind of cool elements. We're not going to look at this right now, but when we get to the jQuery section of this class, when I give you an overview of jQuery, we'll take a div that's like this. Now this is a big div. All right, I can cut it way down easily. Let's make this, instead of this, let's make this 100, and we'll make this 50. All right, so it's a little bit more manageable size. And just to make sure that worked, let's make this orange. Remember, anytime I'm doing this, for instance, when I had red, I could also put in here, if I wanted to, # FF0000. And you'll notice that if I do that, it's smaller now, but it's still red. So I'm going to ask for the hex color code for orange. Orange, red, no, orange. There you go. FFA 500. So let's take that. All right. So that should be orange. It looks like we should make it a little bigger. So let's make it 250 by 150. All right. Go back to this. It's now orange and you see its size. What we will do again when we get to this point, when we're talking about the the jQuery part of the class, is we will take divs like this with nothing in them, and that's how I'm going to teach you animation. So we'll make this go to the right, go down, go up, go to the left. We'll make this slide in and slide out, so we'll make it look like an accordion, where it'll look basically, for lack of better words, when you are working with it, it will look kind of like a shade that's going to open and close. All right, so let's take a quick look here. I think that's enough for now. Again, I could have taken the box stuff and I could put it in my style.css file. Okay. Again, I'm just trying to be consistent when I'm explaining this stuff with you, or to you. Not just consistent, but I'm trying to be as thorough as I possibly can when I think of something. Just to make sure it works, let's change the size. We'll make it 350 by 350, so it should look like a perfect square. And we'll make the color 0000FF, so it should be blue if this works. All right. So you saw what it looked like. Let's refresh. And it didn't change. So why wouldn't that have changed? Because I didn't save. So let's refresh again. And there it is. So again, where we are right now is we have talked about inline CSS, internal CSS, classes and IDs, divs, and I also talked a little bit about color. Before I finish, though, because I went and brought this up, CSS Colors. All modern browsers support the following 140 color names. So you can look in here. I'm not going to read any of them to you. But if you want, you can use either those names, for example, aqua, or you can use those hex combinations. All right. In addition, when you're working with this stuff, and I'm going to kind of peruse my way through this color thing, legal color values. CSS supports not just hex color and RGB, which is what I've shown you so far. It also supports RGBA. RGB is red, green, blue. RGBA is red, green, blue alpha. So it's how transparent or how opaque you want something to be. All right, so I've shown you this. We've looked at RGB. So we can run things this way too. So we could use the RGB code just to show you that. Again, because I'm trying to be consistent here. If we didn't want this to be blue like this, we should be able to say RGB 0, the amount of red, 0, the amount of green, and 255, the amount of blue. All right, let's just make this one green so we see whether or not it worked. All right, and if we come back here, let's see if it turns green. It did. So we know that this works. So we can use, this is basically the call to the red, green, blue method, where we tell it how much red we want, 0 meaning a total absence, 255 meaning a total saturation, and any number between 0 and 255 meaning a certain amount. So if I put in here, for example, I don't know, 111. All right, I'm going to make this 111 for the, so that's the amount of red, that's the amount of green, and that's the amount of blue. I have no idea what this is going to look like. Let's make that 111. And you see how it's changed. All right. Now, when I do this, I can also, if I want to, use RGBA, which is the amount of transparency I want. So I'm going to put here 0.5. All right, that's the amount of alpha. Now, when you look at this, when I refresh, now it is 50% transparent. The color is the same, but you don't see all of it. If I want to see every bit of it, I should just put a 1 in here, which should mean, just like we saw before, if I want it to be almost invisible, I'll put in 8.5, for example. Now it's only 15% visible. No, I'm sorry, I did it backwards. That should be 15. That was 85% visible. Whoops. This should now be 85% invisible. And you notice you can barely see it. But you can have really neat effects that you do with colors by using RGBA. And again, if you want more, you can go into here and take a look. Now, not only is there RGBA, there is HSL. Notice that that's supported by IE9 and above, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, and Opera. HSL is an acronym which means the amount of hue you want in there, the amount of saturation you want in there, and the amount of lightness. It works on a color wheel. All right, so from 0 to 360 is red, 120 is green, 240 is blue. So 0 or 360 is red, 120 is green, and 240 is blue. So if we look at these examples, let's see if they work. So what we're putting in here, we don't need our box anymore. I like to separate this stuff out. You've already, I guess, seen the way that I break this stuff up. So this, if I have hit enter a few times here. If I have an ID of P1, it should have a background color that's green. If I have an ID of P2, it should have a background color that's a light green. If I have an ID of P3, I should have a background color that's dark green. And if I have an ID of P4, and let's make that one a class, just for something different. All right, and that should have a background color then of pastel green. All right, so you've seen these. Green, light green, dark green, pastel green. All right, let's put in 4 paragraphs. And to make it simple, I think I may not have shown you this yet. I'm going to go out to lipsum.org. Not Kipsum, Lipsum. And that'll allow me to generate some paragraphs. I'm going to generate 4 paragraphs. There they are. I'm going to bring them in here, and I'm going to bring them into my document. Again, I don't need, and everything that's up till this point has been commented out. I think I've got my div in here with my box in it. That will now be commented out. And I'm going to paste in my paragraphs. All right, so this first paragraph, P ID equals, and what were our IDs? P1. Pretty simple. P1. All right, so here's all my text. And normally I would format it real pretty like for you, but I don't care. So I'm not going to do that. All right, so that one should be green. Our next paragraph with an ID equal to P2. All right, that paragraph should be light green. Our next paragraph with an ID of P3, I'm pretty sure that was dark green, and it is. And our last paragraph, and I remember that was pastel green. And I didn't have to put those things there, I just put them there so I knew exactly what I was looking at. Now remember, with this one, I have to say class equal P4. Why? Because in here, I made all of these IDs, IDP1, IDP2, IDP3, but a class for P4. So I've saved this. I've now saved this. Let's run it. So green, light green, dark green, pastel green. All right, just some stuff that you can do with colors. I do virtually nothing with hue, saturation, and light. All right, but hue, saturation, and light, just like RGB, also, if you want to, takes a value. So let's do different values in here. So where we've got this, we'll change it from HSL to HSLA, and we'll make this one 25%. We'll make this HSLA, and we'll make that 50%. And then for the next one, we'll make 75%. And for the last one, we'll make it 100%. All right, so you should see varying degrees in here. The easiest way as always to do this is to just take this and refresh. All right, 25%, 50%, 75%, and 100%. So again, what that showed you was how you can use hue, saturation, and light along with alpha. Predefined color names, if you go in there, again, I already mentioned that to you, about 140 of them. Okay, and that looks like it's it. Sounds like a good place to break to me. So when I come back again, we will next, we are now up to here. We've done our first 6. When we come back again, I'd like to go in and talk about floating and positioning. I think that's probably enough that it can have its own lecture. And then after that, we'll go over margin, padding, and borders, and that'll have its own lecture. Then we'll finish up with all of the stuff for CSS. Then we'll go and have one more lecture on the CSS3 stuff. That should give us about 5 lectures. Then for the 6th and final lecture, I'll again come in here and go over this CSS reference, just so you have an idea of what's coming up.